Good morning, everyone. I'm Nancy Black, Regent of the Winnipesaukee Chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution, and beside me is Louise Horskin, President of the Wolfeboro Historical Society. We welcome you all to Wolfeboro, New Hampshire, the final resting place of Samuel Nowell, participant in the Boston Tea Party on December 16, 1773. With us today we have some special guests. Susie Taylor from the Freedom Trail Foundation. Thank you. Evan O'Brien, Creative Manager, Boston Tea Party and Ships Museum. Jonathan Lane, Revolution 250 Coordinator from the Massachusetts Historical Society. Jean Deneau, Archivist, Wolfeboro Historical Society. New Hampshire DAR State Regent Kate Sternberg. Honorary State Regents Elaine Bean and Trish Jackson. Thank you. New Hampshire State Reps Brody DeShays and Bill Marsh. County Commissioner Matthew Plack. And from the American Legion, Paul Vivian. Wolfeboro Selectman Linda Murray is supposed to be here. And Wolfeboro Heritage Commission member Suzanne Ryan. Thank you, Suzanne. The unequaled liberties enjoyed in America today are the legacy of the brave, strong patriots like Samuel Nowell. Their deep faith and beliefs, together with the hope of living in freedom, fortified them throughout their fight. We give thanks, and may we never forget those who fought for the freedom of their new country. In remembering the past, we honor these men and women. I'd like to bring up Evan Lane. So slide over for me a little bit, and you're welcome. Yes. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being here today. My name is Evan O'Brien, Creative Manager at the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum, and it's my pleasure to be here with you in this beautiful cemetery to commemorate the involvement in the Boston Tea Party of Samuel Nowell. Obviously, I'd like to thank everyone who's assembled here today, the town of Wolfeboro, New Hampshire, everyone from the DAR, everyone who made today possible, as well as Kristen Harris from the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum, my good friend Jonathan Lane from Revolution 250, and of course Suzanne Taylor from the Freedom Trail Foundation for making all this happen today. We are working in partnership with Revolution 250 in anticipation of the upcoming 250th anniversary of the Boston Tea Party in December of 2023. Part of this collaboration is the creation of a commemorative year filled with exhibits, special performances, various other educational initiatives and outreach, all in honor of the participants of the Boston Tea Party and this upcoming important anniversary, taking the time to honor those who risked everything to take part in an event that would ultimately come to define a nation. The Boston Tea Party, of course, took place on December 16th, 1773, and it's an event that is remembered and reenacted not just here in New England, but across the country and around the world. John Adams would call it the most magnificent movement of all, and even Royal Governor Thomas Hutchinson, sensing its great importance, would call it the boldest stroke yet struck in America. Its principles and values speak through the generations, and ideas of protesting against injustice and tyranny are things that we can all relate to, even just shy of 250 years later. Many of us, of course, know the basic facts. 3 ships carrying East India Company tea arrive in Boston Harbor between November 28th and December 15th, 1773. The arrival of these vessels set in motion a series of town meetings and protests at Faneuil Hall and Old South Meeting House. And it was inside Old South Meeting House the fate of the tea was sealed. And of course, the Sons of Liberty would march down to Griffin's Wharf to destroy all 340 chests of East India Company tea. We know that story, but how many of us know the names of those involved in this brave action? While no official count exists, it is believed that well over 100 men were involved in the event that would become known as the Boston Tea Party. There's always been an air of secrecy and mystery surrounding these participants. After all, in the eyes of the British authority, this was an act of treason. In the years after the event was not celebrated, certainly not the way that we celebrate it today. As a matter of fact, the term Boston Tea Party was not even first published until 1826. Many of the participants swore an oath of secrecy to never reveal the names of anyone involved in this brave action, which of course makes the research difficult. And while some held true to their oaths even until their death, others did not. And the very fact that we're all standing here today is testament to that. Now, the gentleman that we're here to honor today, Samuel Nowell, was a ship's carpenter at the time of the Boston Tea Party, and apparently operating a shop at a wharf in Boston, though his primary business seemed to be in Roxbury, Massachusetts. There is an account of his life with his death notice in the New Hampshire Patriot and State Gazette issue from Monday, November 18th, 1833. In the book Defiance of the Patriots, Dr. Benjamin Carp lists Nowell as a shipbuilder and working in the port of Boston, and would know his way around the decks and the rigging. Of his occupation, he says that shipbuilders like Samuel Nowell or Gilbert Colesworthy pulled together skeletal keels and white pine masts from New Hampshire, cocked the planks together around them, and fitted vessels with sails and rigging. This difficult work required great knowledge, skill, and expertise. These shipwrights and ship's carpenters were critical during the Boston Tea Party and assisting to open the holds of the vessels and help the boarding parties navigate their way up on ship. All told, it took roughly 3 to 3.5 hours for the tea to be destroyed. Relatively quick work comparatively, however backbreaking labor it certainly was. There is no doubt that gentlemen like Samuel Nowell and those experienced with vessels helped on the evening of December 16th, 1773. Now, the revolutionary spirit of Mr. Nowell can still be found across New Hampshire and across New England, as the brave action of the Tea Party participants reverberated strongly today as they did in 1773. It's important to know that the names of all of the participants of the Boston Tea Party are largely of people who are of humble classes, common tradesmen, common laborers, apprentices, and a large amount of those were young adults and apprentices. These ordinary citizens did extraordinary things, and they're worthy of our recognition. It is our collective hope that by the 250th anniversary of the Tea Party in December of 2023, that these commemorative markers, like the one we're placing today, be placed at the headstone of every known Boston Tea Party participant across the nation. They're buried as far north as the border of Maine and Canada, as far south as Alexandria, Virginia, and as far west as Cincinnati, Ohio. Our hope is that these markers will help people that visit burying grounds like this one to pause and reflect upon the brave deeds of the common yet critically important citizens who are inexplicably tied to the formative years of our region and our nation. Thank you very much.
Jonathan? Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for hosting us here in Wolfeboro. I'm Jonathan Lane with Revolution 250. Revolution 250 is a consortium of organizations, more than 70 organizations, working together on building awareness around the coming 250th anniversary. We've actually been commemorating things since 2015, when we commemorated the colonial response to the Stamp Act in Boston. We've dealt with the British arrival, the arrival of British troops in Boston, and of course we did the 250th anniversary of the Boston Massacre, and are really looking forward to helping to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the Boston Tea Party all throughout next year. And when we talk about the American Revolution, a lot of people, of course, tend to think of the battles, which I might add the Sons of New Hampshire played a glorious role in support of the American cause at Boston, Bunker Hill, the Battle of Chelsea Creek, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, but is something we're going to be looking to tell the story, which features, of course, General Stark and some of the men under his command. But John Adams, and I know we talk a lot about John Adams, and really we do this because he left so many words behind. He just wrote continuously. I don't know how he got anything done. But he says that when he talks about the revolution, he's not talking about the battles. He's not talking about, he believes, and I believe, that the real revolution was what went on in the hearts and minds of the people of the colonies long before a drop of blood was spilled at the Battle of Lexington and Concord. And so Revolution 250 has been working a great deal to help bring these communities together, communities like Wolfeboro and other communities across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and Rhode Island and really throughout New England, to understand the role their communities may have had, not just during the events themselves, but the subsequent history, the men and the women and children who took those ideals that they fought so hard for and brought with them as they spread out across the greater North American continent. So, and when we talk about New Hampshire, I mean, we look to the past. Obviously, Wolfeboro, named after the great British general who was a hero to most Americans. They looked back and they saw people like Wolfe. They looked back, they saw the forefathers who landed at Plymouth, and they held them up as, I won't quite say paragons of virtue, but ideals to be looked to. And in this way, we can now look back, and actually we probably have a greater clarity of vision than the men and women of 1775 did. And so one of the things that we're really working on is not just to tell the stories of people like Samuel Nowell and John Hancock and Paul Revere and Giles Colesworthy, who did extraordinary things, as Evan just said. But we have a broader vision for the history of the American Revolution, and in this day and age, we have the capability to tell a broader history of the Revolution. So we're also looking to tell the stories of some of the underrepresented voices in the history. So let's talk about the role of Native Americans who both supported independence for America and also fought against independence for America. Let's talk about the women who are left behind. Massachusetts had at one point 27% of their male workforce in the field of battle, which put a great strain and burden upon the home lives of their families that they left behind, who not only had to maintain the farms and the shops and the industries, but they had to go above and beyond to provide the material of war that the men needed while they were in the field. So let's talk about the women who are here supporting independence, or in the case of some of the loyalists who were forced to flee, let's talk about our friends and neighbors who were driven out of their community because they did not support the cause of American independence. Let's talk about the African Americans, freed and enslaved, who fought for and against American independence. We have the ability to tell a wider story, and at Revolution 250, we are looking forward to working with all the communities to do just that. So thank you very much for turning out today. Thank you to the DIR for their continued work, the SIR, and we'll look forward to seeing you during the 250th.
And I'm Gene Deneau from the Wolfeboro Historical Society, and I'm the archivist. Thank you, Nancy, you took it away. One of the things that is little known about Samuel Nowell is his life after the Revolutionary War. No one's talked about the Revolutionary War. That's well documented, but he shipped out with the Navy and was involved with a number of battles. And the first one, and I won't go into detail because it's well documented, but his ship captured a British ship. Then, getting separated from the fleet, the British sailors recaptured the ship and retook it. In another battle, it was again went to the sides of the Americans. This went back and forth. Eventually, he was imprisoned for 16 months in Halifax, Nova Scotia. He was treated very badly during that period. I think he caught malaria, and he was singled out because he was a leader. He actually planned an escape tunnel, but a traitor in the ranks gave it up. So he had very severe punishment. In a transfer from Halifax to New York on a British ship, he and 400 other prisoners managed to take control of the ship and get back to the American side. All of this left him in very poor health. After the war, he was living in Newburyport, Massachusetts, and his doctors recommended that he move to a drier climate for his health. This brought him to Wolfeboro, and very little is known about his life in Wolfeboro, and I'm going to tell you something about it. Some members of the Newell family had moved to Wolfeboro earlier, and one of his brothers, name unknown, except his last name, of course, built a house on the hills above Sewell Point on Lake Winnipesaukee, which is not very far from here, only about a mile and a half from here, and perhaps a mile from downtown. Samuel Nowell, who was a carpenter by trade, moved here about 1790, and shortly thereafter built a house, probably with help from his brother, on property on the hill. The house was a typical New England house, roughly 22 by 38, but 2 stories high. He moved his family here. Now, if he was an ordinary citizen, I wouldn't have anything more to say, but he was not. he continued to be a contributor, and his talents, and he was very literate, his talents were recognized early. In 1804, he was appointed to be the clerk of a committee to write a constitution for the new town library. In 1808, he was a selectman. He served a term as selectman, and they were very important. 3 selectmen ran the town in those days. In 1811, he was appointed to a committee of 3 to act as school superintendents. In 1822, he once again served a term as selectman. So he was a real contributor to the community, and we were very proud to have him. He lived in that same house from about 1790 until he sold it in 1828 and moved to one of the historic farms right down here a few blocks on the corner of North Main and Lucas Street. He was in pretty poor health at that time, and I think he was about 85 years old or so. He died in that house in 1833. There's an interesting story about his first house. It was sold in the 1830s and moved across the lake. It would be moved in the winter. They would use tall trees to shove them underneath the house. It only had a stone cellar. And multiple teams of oxen would drag the house across Wolfeboro Bay on the ice. It was brought up on the hill leading to South Main Street, and it still exists today opposite the high school. A few years ago, I worked with the owner of that house at the time, researched the history, and she now has a plaque standing in front of the house indicating that was the home of Samuel Nowell, and he was a patriot involved with the Boston Tea Party. I've been in the house. It's a typical early New England house with very small rooms built around the central fireplace. It also has an annoyance for me. The doorways were short and the ceiling was shorter than our standards today in order to conserve the heat. We in Wolfeboro are very proud to have him as a resident.
Okay, Sternenberg, New Hampshire State Region.
Thank you, Nancy Black, Chapter Regent of the Winnipesaukee Chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, for her kind invitation. It's my honor as State Regent to represent 25 chapters and 1,120 members in the state of New Hampshire who are Daughters of the American Revolution. These members trace their heritage to a patriot of the American Revolution. The DAR was founded in 1890 and is the largest women's nonprofit service organization in the United States, with more than 190,000 members and 3,000 chapters in all 50 states and Washington, D.C. The mission of the DAR is to promote historic preservation, education, and patriotism. The goal of the Pamela Wright administration, the 46th President General of the National Organization, is to celebrate our nation's rich history and diversity of experience upon the threshold of America's 250th anniversary. There is no better way to serve these objectives and this goal than to honor Samuel Nowell, a revolutionary patriot and participant in the Boston Tea Party, with a grave marking. I congratulate the chapter and those who collaborated with other organizations such as the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum, Revolution 250, Wolfeboro Historical Society, and Massachusetts Historical Society for this day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you. Now we'll do the grave marking.
Now we invite our historical interpreter to place the marker.
In honoring Samuel Nowell, we also pay tribute to all the men and women who have served our country with integrity and devotion. We dedicate ourselves anew to a faithful stewardship of the blessings we enjoy today. This concludes our ceremony. Please join us for refreshments at the Wolfeboro Historical Society's barn at Clark Plaza. No, not Clark Plaza, Clark Park on South Main Street. Thank you. Across from Huggins Hospital. Thank you.